talk about specifically the deployment part. We'll talk about license and role assignment. We'll talk about permissioning the different parts of Viva Insights. And we will talk about org data upload as well. One quick note here as I begin, when I talk about the admin, the specific personas I'm referring to would be our IT admin, so someone who has global admin roles, and also our product admin. So this is a user or set of users who have the Viva Insights admin role. And I'll call out specifically when I'm talking about our IT admin versus our global admin, because they have different tasks as we go through deployment. So here's a brief summary of what we'll go through. We have steps from A through F, and I'll talk about each of them in detail. But we have some of the steps such as assigning licenses, assigning our different roles, permissioning our leader manager experience, managing the default start state for different Insights surfaces, setting up the Viva Insights Teams app, and some additional settings like organizational data, additional privacy settings. I'll go over each of these in more detail, but as we see here, we have, for each step, we have who is actually the right persona to be able to access this. When I say M365 admin, think of the global admin. And of course, we'll have links to our documentation and resources for each step. So let's get started with the first step, which is assigning the Viva Suite or Viva Insights licenses. So customers can purchase our product by purchasing a specific license to Viva Insights. They can also purchase a license to the Viva Suite. Both are assigned the same way. I do recommend that one great resource that admins can use when setting up Viva Insights and other parts of the Viva module is a resource that we published or released middle of last year. It's the Viva landing page in the M365 Admin Center. This is accessed in the Admin Center, and you can search on the top bar for Viva, and you'll see a link to this page. This splash page has all resources for how to set up all parts of all different modules within Viva. And we have a dedicated Viva Insights page where a lot of these steps will be shown. I want to call back to the licensing step here. We want to make sure that you set up, when you assign licenses, the requirement is that you assign a minimum of 10 licenses in order for data processing to begin. So this is a step that we know customers have missed in the past, and we're working to improve our UI to make sure that this is clear. But make sure that in your deployment steps, you have that at least 10 licenses must be assigned for the processing to begin and for the Insights Analyst app to be ready. In addition to the 10 licenses, it takes 5 days for the collaboration data to be gathered and processing to be completed, and for the product to be ready for use. So make sure that you take that into account in your deployment timeline. You have the option of, so that's a bit on licenses. I want to talk briefly about service plans. And I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with service plans, but service plans are the different services that are included in a license. And a license may have a number of different service plans within it, and Viva Insights and the Viva license is no exception. You can manage these in AAD, and this is one way in which customers have used to manage access to the different plans that could be included in a license. So again, this is just an additional option that you have if you want to have further control of which parts of the experience to grant access to. So the next step in the deployment overview is to assign the Insights Admin and Insights Analyst role. So these are two key roles. The Insights Admin role is the product admin role, and that role we'll see has the responsibility for setting up the org data, setting up advanced privacy, and managing the leader access. The Insights Analyst role is a role for end users, for those end users that are going to be utilizing the advanced insights tool to be able to run queries and run some of the Power BI templates that we have available. So that's what those roles are. It's very simple to assign these roles. They can be assigned in the admin center. They can also be assigned in AAD. I do want to call out just one recommendation that we have based on our work with customers. Our recommendation for some of our larger customers and for customers with larger teams that are dedicated to Viva Insights is that they assign the role to an AAD group. And what this helps is it allows the IT admin to set up the AAD group and grant analyst permissions to that group and all the users that are in that group. That's an option if you're going to have, if you expect to have many people, for example, assign the analyst role who may have kind of come in and out of their responsibilities. And so the easiest way to maintain that is to have them in an AAD group, and that AAD group be assigned the analyst role, for example. As an alternative, you can always assign the roles to specific individuals. And you can verify role assignment by going to the Setup tab in the Admin Center, select Microsoft Viva, Viva Insights, and the add-on plan. And you can view the different roles available, and you can view which users or which groups currently have access to these roles. So the next slide I'm going to talk about is another part of the assigning roles step, specifically around privilege identity management. So for those not familiar with privilege identity management, this is a Microsoft M365 feature. It's included in certain M365 licenses, and it's accessed through Microsoft Entra or AAD. This feature allows the IT admin to manage different permissions to roles, whether they want to provide provisional access for a certain time period. They can also set a specific time limit in which a role becomes active. It's really a feature that M365 built for security and privacy, and it applies to all sorts of different M365 roles. Not all customers have it or have it enabled, but I do want to talk about it today because we have heard from customers who were not familiar with privilege identity management and how that would impact some of the Viva Insights role. So this is just a good call out to have. Again, it doesn't apply to every customer. Only those customers that have set up privilege identity management and have access to it are the ones that this would be relevant for. So IT admins will set up their PIM settings based on their company policies. As admins are assigning the Viva Insights roles, they can further customize the PIM settings for Viva Insights role. They may add approvals and activation steps to the role assignment, or they may limit the duration in which a role remains active. As the IT admin, you have the ability to manage these settings, whether you want to add additional steps to the role assignment process, or you want to set a time period in which the role becomes active. All of those are up to you and your company policies. This is how you would manage them here. So the way that a customer can manage their PIM settings for their role, they can use Microsoft Entra or AAD. They can find the role, and clicking on the role settings, they will be able to see and edit their different PIM settings for all roles and for the specific roles. So moving on now to our third step, which is around how admins can permission our leader experience. You may know this experience as a group manager experience or the organizational tab in the Teams and web app. It's a really important part of the setup process, and we've seen that some customers have missed these step, and it prevents them from getting the most out of Viva Insights. So I think it's really worth highlighting. So the settings here are can be managed by the Viva Insights administrator. So this requires the user to have the Viva Insights admin role to be able to manage these settings. As the Viva Insights admin, they can manage who they want to grant leader access to by using this page. So this will be accessible by clicking on analysis.insights.viva.com. It's the same way that the analyst portal is accessed for users that have the analyst role. Once here, they can access the page by clicking on the manager settings menu. And there are two ways to permission a leader to be able to view these insights. The first way is, as we see, checking the box at the top. That grants all eligible managers with access to the leader experience. And the leader experience are the aggregated insights that a manager can see for their team. And what I mean by eligible managers, there is a minimum team size, which at a minimum is set to 10, which means that the manager and their total reports, the people in the reporting line, it doesn't have to be a direct report, has to total at least 10 in order for a manager to be eligible. If they are below that, which is the minimum, they will not be shown as eligible and they will not be shown any aggregated insights. So one of the ways you do that is you check the box, and that allows everyone who is eligible, so who meets that minimum team size, to be able to view these aggregated insights. Another option, if you want to further customize who has access to this experience, you can select specific managers that you want to provision for this. The way that you do this today is to upload a CSV file and that CSV file, we have a list of all the managers that you want to permission. And if they are eligible in the system, they will be then enabled with the manager access. So you can provision all eligible managers, or you can select specific managers to provision for this. I see a question on whether, let me go back to the leader experience. I see a question in the chat on whether this can be automated with a link to Workday. Not today, but I do want to highlight a feature that we're going to be releasing in the second half of this year that will help to make it even easier to permission this manager experience. So we're going to make this the way that managers are provisioned more dynamic by allowing an admin to use org attributes that they've uploaded or org attributes that exist in AAD to be able to permission managers that meet certain criteria or that meet some of the org attributes. The other way that we are granting additional flexibility is to be able to permission this by AAD groups. So allowing admins to create AAD groups for the managers that they want to be able to provision with this experience. So we've talked about the leader experience, and now I want to talk about what we call our personal insights, or all the insights that are available to our end user population. As an admin, you have the additional flexibility to manage the default state. And default state is you can decide if users need to opt into Viva Insights or if Viva Insights will be on by default. And as always, users will always have the option to opt out of any Viva Insights interface. Um, the way that admins can manage the start state is two ways. They can do it in the M365 Admin Center, or they can program it using PowerShell commands. To do it in the M365 Admin Center, this is how you would manage your tenant level settings. So in the org settings menu, or in the Viva Insights admin page, you can access this panel here that we see on the left-hand side, which allows you as an admin to uncheck the box to some of these interfaces. And by unchecking it, it means that you are requiring users to opt in to Viva Insights before they can view and access the experience. So the image that we have on the right-hand side is the end user view. And this is what a user who opens up the Viva Insights Teams app in this case, who is set to opt out, will see. So if an admin has opted out users, when a user goes into Viva Insights, they will see a splash page and they will have a prompt to opt in to Viva Insights if they choose to. Users also can customize and determine which surfaces they want to access and which ones they want to exclude, like, for example, our digest email if they choose to. Now, I do want to focus on the PowerShell commands. We have the ability today for admins to program how they want to set the start state at a user level by using the commandlet that we see on the left-hand side, the My Analytics feature config. Now, one thing that we are releasing in the next month is the commandlet that we see on the right-hand side, which is the same commandlet, except that it allows the admin to set the default state for the entire tenant. So this is essentially recreating the Admin Center UI, but doing it in a PowerShell commandlet, so there is parity between the two. This is something that we've been asked by many customers, and so we are releasing it next month. So be on the lookout for that. Next up here is setting up the Viva Insights Teams app. I do want to just highlight that the Viva Insights Teams app is pre-installed into Teams. So unless unless you as an admin have disabled it in the past, you don't need to install it. What we do recommend that you do is that you pin the app into the Teams menu so that it's visible to all users. They don't have to go into the App Store to search for it. So this is something that an admin with the Teams admin role can do. They access the Teams admin center. They can install the app if they've uninstalled it in the past. They can pin the app. They also can use the Teams admin center to set policies. So if you want to exclude specific users or groups of users from accessing the Teams app, this is where you can go and do that. The next step here is on customizing additional Viva Insights setting. So this is done by the Viva Insights admin. So a user has to have the Viva Insights admin role to be able to manage these. The first one here is the minimum group size. All right, so this is the minimum size at which aggregated insights can be shown. So it's set to a minimum of 10, and an admin can set it to be higher than 10, but they can't go lower than than 10. We've also added this new feature over the last 6 months, which is the end user opt-out. And what this option does, if it's turned on by the admin, is that it gives the licensed employees the ability to opt out of having their data be visible in the person query results. So the data will still be included in aggregate insights and query results from different collaboration events, like our meeting query, for example, regardless whether they've opted out or not. But it gives users additional flexibility to opt out of having their data be included in query results that the analyst would use. As always, query results are anonymized. And to give you a sense of what query results are, is this is exclusively related to the analyst experience. So in the analyst experience, people with the insights analyst role can run queries. They can and these queries can power the Power BI templates that you're familiar with. The queries allow the analyst to be able to kind of analyze data in more detail. And what this end user opt-out option does is it allows them users to be excluded from being part of those query results. There's a question on, will the analyst know how many users have opted out or not? So today we don't have that option, but it is something that we have in the roadmap. And I want to close out this section before I address additional questions with a link to or a list of different resources and links that you can use in your deployment journey. So the Admin Center, AAD, the Teams Admin Center, the Insights Admin Interface, and our documentation page. And Jyoti, just a question for you. Before we go into the org data section, should we pause and take some questions here? Just please let me know what you prefer.
Yes, for sure. You can take that.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the questions in the chat, but if you have additional questions, please use the hand raise feature. And when I call on you, you can unmute yourself and I'll answer the question. So Jane asked when this will become available. I assume that you were referring to the leader functionality to be able to permission it by using AAD groups and org data and AAD attributes. That will be available in Q3 of this year. If users opt out of the interface, does that also opt their data out of insights for the overall enterprise? That's a good question. So it does not. By default, it does not. It just means that users will be opted out of viewing the Teams app, the email, and accessing any other interface. But as I mentioned, with the additional end user opt-out option, which is off by default and an admin can turn it on, it does allow the user, if they opt out of Viva Insights, to also opt out of the query results. So it is not by default, but it is an additional setting that an admin can allow. Are there any other questions before I switch over to our org data section? And Jyoti, as just want to keep timing in mind, how much time do I have for this org data review?
Yeah, you have 10 more minutes because after that we'll have 5 minutes for Q&A and then the remaining minutes for wrap up.
Okay. Yeah, 10 minutes should be enough. So I want to switch over now to another important part of the deployment journey, which is around organizational data. We'll talk about the default data source options. And then we'll talk also about our data preparation guidelines, how the first time upload should go, and what to do for subsequent uploads. So starting with the default data source, this is something that the Viva Insights admin role can access, right? This was the Insights admin interface in which they can manage organizational data. One of the pages here that an admin will see is the Data Hub page. And the Data Hub will show them missing insights and missing or low quality data field and their descriptions. We built this to help our admins make sure they have the right data so that users can get the most out of Viva Insights. By default, whenever you provision Viva Insights and assign those licenses, and data processing is completed, AAD data will be used as the default source. And the data fields that we pull from AAD are manager ID and the organization fields. The manager ID is just getting the manager hierarchy. So to know how to set up the aggregated insights. And the organization fields are used as an additional way to pivot and group data for the advanced insights. If you choose to not, you can choose to have additional data, and by replacing the AAD data with an HR upload. And if you do this, you will not be using AAD data anymore to connect it to the data. You'll instead be using this HR file as the default source for how data is mapped. I'll talk more about what that is in a moment. So I guess there are two paths here. The first path is if you want to keep AAD data, there's nothing further that you need to do to prepare Viva Insights, right? It's pulled by default, and the organization field will be pulled by default, and the manager hierarchy will be pulled by default. If you choose to override that, or if you prefer to have additional data fields, then this is the path that we would follow. And this is what I'll go over next, is the data preparation guidelines for that HR data file. Okay. The first thing here is which employees to include in the upload. So you want to make sure that you include all employees in the data field and not just your licensed employees. How often to upload organizational data is a common question. What we see customers do is they upload data at least once a month to keep data fresh on a monthly basis. So this is a way in which customers can update the data to track for any movements of or changes within the organization. So how to supply data for over a time period. One of the fields when you upload your org data file will be the effective date. The effective date essentially tells Viva Insights that these org changes or this org data is effective as of this date through the feature until it's changed again. So, for example, in your initial upload, you will have organizational data for the last 13 months, and you want to be able to have historically track all the changes that have occurred during that 13-month period. So if you've had, I'm just going to put an example here, if you have users that have moved to different parts of the organization for each of those 13 months, then your data file will have, for that specific user, will have 13 rows. one for each month. And for each of those changes, there will be an effective date. So if they were in marketing in January and move to finance in February, there will be one row that has the user with the marketing team and the effective date. And then there will be another row that has the effective date for when they started in the finance team. And that's how the or data file is prepared when it comes to effective date. An effective date is something that will be important when we talked about subsequent uploads. So I'll talk about that when we get to that section. There's a question on whether you have to upload data manually. Shouldn't it be automatic by now? So I mentioned in the beginning that it is automatic if you want to use AAD data. If you want to add your own fields, you have to upload them manually. We are working on data connectors to be able to automate this process, and that's set for Q2 or Q3 of this year. I'll talk about some of the general guidelines around data preparation. Make sure you avoid too many or too few unique values. Avoid any redundant attributes, and use only valid values and data formats. I think the summary here is, garbage in, garbage out. So you want to make sure your data is clean, so that it helps make sure that you have quality results from the data. You want to make sure that you begin your fields with a letter, and that it only contains alphanumeric characters, and that there are no formulas in your headers. And a couple of rules for field values. You want to make sure that it's a CSV format with UTF-8 encoding. And you want to make sure that the required fields are not, there's not a blank value in those required fields. Otherwise, when you upload it, you will get an error message. So speaking of what's required and what's not required, there are 4 fields that are required: the person ID, manager ID, the organization field, and the effective date. Those are the only required fields. Anything else will be up to you if you want to upload it. We typically see if you're going to have a data team that's going to be working and doing advanced analytics, they typically want to see additional fields like function type, level designation, a supervisor indicator. You have, I think, over 100 different fields that you can upload. There is a question from Jane. Jane, go ahead. What's your question?
Sure. I just have a quick question. So we have our Workday data already being fed to AAD, so I think we're set that way. But I just wanted to confirm, if we have those 4 required fields already in AAD from Workday, we're set then, right? From a required perspective?
That's correct. Yeah. So you don't need to upload a file.
We don't need to change even our feed to AAD at this point until we wanted to get more of those pieces, right?
That's right.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Want to just highlight some potential common reasons for validation failures. So the first is the file format. Make sure it's a CSV file with a UTF-8. A couple of others that I highlight here that I've seen before. Effective date and hire date, make sure the values are in this date format so that they can be read in the system. The person ID and manager ID fields, they need to be valid email addresses here. So that's another common cost that we see here. And here are some additional steps if you're experiencing processing failures as you're uploading data. So we recommend that you can, if you're seeing processing fail, to try re-uploading the file, ensuring that you have the correct data format. If you're seeing issues once you've made these changes, we want to make sure that we have the support to help you. So make sure that you file a support ticket or ICM incident so we can get engineers working on that. Processing could take several hours to about a day or so. Make sure that you have additional 10 licenses. Make sure that you are assigning at least 10 licenses in order for the process to begin. And as I mentioned, it takes 5 days for the product to be ready once those once the minimum licenses have been assigned. So I mentioned that for customers who choose to upload data manually, they are typically maintaining the data every month. So what this means is that every month they are uploading a new data set to account for any changes that have occurred in the last month. So you don't necessarily need to upload the entire data set. You just need to upload the changes that have occurred. So if you want to add, if there are new employees that have joined, you can do that there. You can add new fields. You can edit specific fields. You can remove attributes. Or if you choose to, you can replace the entire existing organizational data. Make sure if you are using this that you be aware that this option would delete all the data you've uploaded in the past. And so this is essentially for resetting all the org data. I don't recommend that option unless you really want to start over. What I recommend is that if you are doing monthly updates, that you only upload the data that has changed over the last month, and everything else you can keep historically.